Hangouts as well as TalkShoe. And I've got the visuals of your mock draft up and everything. So we'll get started. The Cleveland Browns are on the clock. Tell your listeners what you did with the Browns at number 1.
Well, with the Browns at number 1, I went ahead and went with the mobile Lamar Jackson. The reason for that is because clearly they've been known to not be very mobile, especially throughout the season and their whole entire franchise in general. So I really thought that was a good pick for Lamar Jackson to go there because, A, you're going to get a confident quarterback, but you're also going to get a quarterback that's not going to rely so much on the offensive line to be a pocket passer. That's also kind of why I kind of figured that the UCLA quarterback wasn't going to do as well in Cleveland either, because you have a guy that's a pocket passer versus a guy that's going to be able to create plays and be mobile, which to me is something that Cleveland needs. I think Cleveland had the right idea when they signed RG3, but they could have taken it a step further, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Lamar Jackson allows you to take that step further. This is one of the toughest quarterback evaluations I've done in years. I literally have Baker, Lamar, and Rosen 1 point within each other as far as upside, as far as potential goes. So this is one of the toughest evaluations I've done. And there's people that still believe Sam Darnold's going to go number 1 to Cleveland. So it's really going to be interesting to see what happens, how this whole process shakes up, because I think there's so much uncertainty at this point in the process with the Browns. But you've got Lamar at 1, and that's a good pick. I probably would go with Lamar at number 1 at this point as well. Moving on to number 2, the New York Giants.
For number 2 pick overall, the New York Giants select Josh Rosen out of UCLA. The reason is they finally get an upgraded version of Eli Manning, somebody that's going to be able to have a cannon-like arm and play downfield, but also a better decision maker, if you will. The Giants finally get the real Manning in Peyton Manning's little mini-me in Rosen, because I think Rosen has that pocket presence and the IQ. I'm not going to say it's as high as Peyton Manning's yet, but I think that the potential to be like that is there. I know that's kind of saying a lot, but if you really watch his game film, I mean, he really understands the way that the game should be played, and he has great mechanics as well, and that powerful arm that I'm very fond of. Plus, he makes better decisions than what Darnold did, and that was also my other reasoning for putting a guy with a powerful arm like that so far ahead too.
Yeah, Josh Rosen definitely has made better decisions than Sam Darnold, so that's definitely something to take a look at. And he's my number 2 player as well at the moment in my mock draft. Right now I have Lamar and Rosen in the top 2 spots, but there's a lot of variables still left to be played out. The next 2 teams, San Francisco at 3 and Denver at 4, take us down in those picks.
Right, you have San Francisco at number 3. I gave them Saquon Barkley out of Penn State. The reason for that is he's a very hard-hitting running back, and I feel like that would be the type of Frank Gore second coming that they would need to be able to open up the lanes down the middle. I mean, you have a great quarterback in Garoppolo now that they had traded for, so I think that by being able to get a hard-nosed running back like that, it's going to be able to help keep the defense honest and be able to let Jimmy do what he has to do, which is throw the ball deep and show the world about that Patriots type offense. So I think that ultimately that was a great fit as well. Plus, he can catch the ball. He's very mobile. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that this running back would be able to help the 49ers ultimately. So even if Jimmy G isn't their guy, they still have that solid running back.
Yeah, and both of their offensive tackles have played well when healthy. Both Joe Staley and Trent Brown have played well at offensive tackle this year, which is a little bit surprising considering what state the 49ers are in, that both of their offensive tackles are playing well. You trade for Garoppolo, you get Barkley, so yeah, there was a spelling error with Saquon, but whatever. Let's move on to Denver.
No, I understand. I guess with Barkley, I feel like he'd be a better fit ultimately for San Francisco. But moving forward, though, next in the draft, we have the Denver Broncos. I was very sold on Paxton Lynch last year. I liked his tape coming out of college. I wish I could have had a chance to watch some of the interviews that the Broncos did with him to be able to determine that this kid has zero confidence and has no idea what he's doing. I mean, when you come to the NFL, you're hungry, you want to play, you want to be able to start and be the man, not, hey, guys, please don't start me yet. I don't think I'm ready. So the Broncos finally get that competitive nature type play, and they get somebody that has the passion of the game, something similar to what John Elway was back in his younger day, and that's Baker Mayfield out of Oklahoma. So finally, the Broncos get a tough-nosed quarterback that's going to be passionate and lead the team down the field. Plus, he has good receivers and a good running game to help back him up in that Super Bowl defense. So ultimately, Baker Mayfield is the plug-and-go quarterback, and we might be able to see a rookie go back to the Super Bowl, similar to the way that we saw Ben Roethlisberger take the Steelers back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, we could see him take the Broncos to the AFC Championship if they got him. I definitely buy that, Ryan. As far as Paxton Lynch goes, I was never sold on his ability coming out of college. He had the arm, but the accuracy and decision-making felt questionable at times. We'll see if Paxton can bounce back from this. And we'll see if Denver decides to stick with him or get a new quarterback or get a quarterback in free agency. There's a lot of variables that are in play here for Denver at number 4. Number 5 is Indianapolis.
Yes, number 5, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Go ahead, Kerm.
Before you go to Indianapolis, maybe the reason why Paxton Lynch said he wasn't ready because he knew he's got a few things to work on before he could do the whole playbook, and he didn't want to start a game with only half the playbook work. Or there was just something nagging him, and he didn't want to go into the game and be the right of the ability to the team.
Thanks for that input, Kern.
So, who knows? Besides, I wouldn't draft a quarterback 2 years in a row, especially if draft him into the first round. That just screams this guy's so good, and that we shouldn't have drafted him. Maybe year 2 or 3, but not the first year overall.
Yeah.
But they go on to make something fun to do. They get that in there.
I guess with like the picks, I'm trying to be able to see what the team might be able to need, but also ultimately what's going to help them succeed in the short term and long run. So I gave the Colts Quentin Nelson as well at the guard position to be able to help give Andrew Luck a little bit of security on that line as well.
Yeah, their left guard, Jack Buhort, suffered a season-ending injury, and he's a free agent after this year, so the Colts can keep their first-round picks, Costanzo and Ryan Kelly at left tackle and center. They can get Nelson, and he'll provide a bit of stability in between Costanzo and Kelly, assuming they keep Costanzo. So, yeah, it's a great pick. That's what I've had the Colts doing for the past 3 weeks. I just don't see them passing on him.
Yeah, I feel like for as good as the potential is that he's going to be, especially at the guard position, I think that's one of those once-in-a-lifetime guards. Usually we're talking about centers and tackles, but this guard in particular is going to be a very special player.
Yep. Number 6, the Chicago Bears. This is a player we both loved on tape, and I was telling people about this player on tape on Tuesday while making the picks. And this is a player we both came away super impressed with, Ryan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Roquan Smith, I put him to the Bears because I feel like he'd be the second coming of Brian Urlacher. You have a guy on tape that has good motor and good awareness. I mean, he'll sit there and disrupt the plays in the backfield, of course, but even then, if the ball's going the other way, you can definitely expect him to keep chasing. Plus, he has that good physical stature as well. I mean, he was really able to sit there and show that for the big guy. He's actually not only pretty strong, but he's pretty quick on his feet as well. So I figured that this would be a really good fit because now you have I guess you'd say, a monster-type linebacker that's going to sit there and anchor a defense and really hopefully start to get that team on another building block of becoming the great Chicago Bears again and being that defense that can get you back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, number 7.
Number 7, I really like this one. Chris, I mean, I really like Minkah Fitzpatrick to the Browns. The reason for that is I feel like any player coming out of Alabama right now, they get the coaching from Nick Saban, they get the ideology of being in a championship-type environment. You also have somebody that's going to want to be competitive. They want to be number one. That's the beauty about the Alabama program. So I feel like with Minkah Fitzpatrick, you have a guy that's going to be this athletic cornerback playmaker that's going to be able to get the ball inside of our earlier pick, Lamar Jackson's hands, by being able to help create those turnovers and do the different things. Plus, I do like the stamina as well. So just in case the Browns do end up failing and they go 3 and out again, at least now you have a guy that's going to be able to be a lockdown cornerback.
Yeah, I mean, they never replaced Joe Hayden, and this is a guy who can play any position on the secondary. He can be utilized as a corner or a safety, so you can put him in either role. He's easily the best defensive back in this class, and there are people – Mark believes he's a blue-chip prospect and he warrants top 5 consideration, but I see more of a top 10 player. But either way, Minkah Fitzpatrick's not getting out of the top 7. I've heard Tampa Bay likes him more than Bradley Chubb as well, according to Tony Mario. So speaking of Bradley Chubb and Tampa Bay and Tony Mario's team, they're next on the clock at number 8.
They are, Chris. I like Bradley Chubb a lot because you have a big, strong guy that's coming from an even better program like Georgia, or like Carolina State, I should say, where the smaller schools, I feel like they do teach the basics a little bit more. So I feel like he has the knowledge of the game and the IQ of the game, along with like the different types of technique. So now I feel like it's a matter of being able to get the right coaching as far as strength training, as far as, hey, this is how you're going to read the NFL offensive blocking scheme and different things like that to be able to get around the offensive line. So ultimately, I feel like the Buccaneers get a guy that's going to be able to help heal the game late by being able to stop the run, by being able to sit there and get to the edges with these quicker running backs that are in that position.
And we'll get to the next 2 picks to wrap out the top 10. Cincinnati at 9 and Arizona at 10.
With Cincinnati, I went ahead and I had them pick up Connor Williams. The reason for that is because you have a big, aggressive body that on the offensive line and somebody that might be able to give Andy Dalton the protection that he needs. I mean, I was really expecting Andy Dalton to have a very good year this year, especially after the past couple of years connecting with A.J. Green as much as he was. So I feel like maybe their trouble is going to start on the offensive line, and especially with a guy like Joe Mixon coming out of Oklahoma last year. Now you finally get an offensive lineman that's going to be able to run north and south and help set up those blocks for your running back, but also an offensive lineman that's going to be aware enough and probably just quick enough on his feet to be able to help spread that pocket and give Andy Dalton some time to be able to throw. So I felt like that was a really good pick for the Bengals to take.
Yeah, and with Mike Mcglinchey, I mean, I like Mike Mcglinchey and Okorafor better, but what we've been hearing from Cincinnati is that they really like Connor Williams, and it's easy to see why, because Connor Williams helped Donta Foreman rush for 2,000 yards at Texas last year. And while he doesn't maintain blocks as long as I'd like him to, he might be the best fit for what the Bengals need as far as the offensive tackles in this year's draft go.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be great about that, especially if he does go to the Bengals, because Andy Dalton has such a quick drop back and he has a quick release, especially from having to deal with such a horrific offensive line for years past. Really, it's a good situation for him to be in. Going on, though, Chris, our next pick, we did have the Cardinals with RVP, a really good left outside linebacker, especially at the 3-4 spot. I felt like this was a good move by the Cardinals to be able to get this guy out of LSU, because right now that LSU program is developing defenders, and they're developing tough, intelligent defenders. So I feel like by being able to get an athletic 3-4 linebacker, you're going to be able to have a guy that's going to be able to get to the edges. You're going to have a guy that's going to be able to help contain a Russell Wilson if he should decide to get mobile and start running the ball.
And they've drafted players out of LSU. Tyrann Mathieu, Patrick Peterson. They drafted Kevin Minter out of LSU, even though that didn't pan out. They've drafted LSU players in the past, so maybe this would pan out. Worst case scenario, you're getting another Mingo. Best case scenario, you're getting a pass rusher next to Chandler Jones who can get double-digit sacks.
Exactly. I mean, you said it right there. They have the past history of doing it, so it shows that they continue to look at LSU and be able to go through their program and really be able to get going.
Next up at 11 and 12, a couple of Cowboys are coming off the board. Yeehaw!
Next up, the Dallas Cowboys. I thought the Jets.
No, Oklahoma State Cowboys, Ryan. Back-to-back Cowboys. Yeehaw, get with the program here.
Okay, I was just like, man, I'm like, Chris, I think you're losing your mind a little bit. The Cowboys are bad, not that. But that's any Cowboys fan that's out there, that's a lot of them. You know, they don't know if they're after championships back in the night.
I think that Chris was talking about Oklahoma State.
But Chris, you made the point about the Cowboys, so I have the Jets taking Nathan Rudolph, and there's a reason for that, Chris. They signed Fitzpatrick for terrible money, and they've made awful choices at the quarterback position. They haven't been able to draft a quarterback. They tried Geno Smith back in the day and just god awful experiment.
They've tried Petty and Hackenberg. They've both been terrible.
Hackenberg hasn't been terrible, but he's definitely not the franchise guy that's going to sit there and recharge everything. So I think right now with the Jets taking Mason Rudolph, they're going to be able to get a Aaron Rodgers / Drew Brees type quarterback where you have a guy that's not going to be able to be afraid to throw down the field and in the double court coverage and really make those plays. So I think that the Jets fans ultimately end up really, really happy, and they're able to rejoice because they're going to have a quarterback, like a winning quarterback anyway, like Joe Namath, that's going to be able to get them back to the Super Bowl.
Yep, and then at number 12, we have Mason's teammate going to the nation's capital.
Exactly. We have the Redskins picking up Washington. Washington, a very gifted receiver, probably is also part of a reason why Mason had so much success, especially in college. But I really like James Washington. He reminds me a little bit of a mixture of Terrell Owens and Des Bryant a little bit. So I feel like he's going to be a really safe receiver pick. Finally, the Redskins are able to say, hey, Cousins, sign with us. We can get you a big game target that's going to be able to be a playmaker for you. That way you don't have to worry about sitting in the pocket as long. So I think that this pick was ultimately selected for Cousins to be able to help entice him to keep him in here. So
yeah,
I think,
and while Josh Dotson was an effective 2016 first-round pick, he only has 24 receptions, 354 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns. Josh Dotson hasn't really broke out like you want him to. And when you consider he was drafted ahead of Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints, you can argue that Dotson's a bust for that reason, because Michael Thomas has provided much better value so far in New Orleans than Dotson has in Washington. So you can certainly make that argument. Plus, Pryor's a free agent as well. So there's multiple arguments you can make there.
There definitely is multiple arguments you can make, especially, well, my main one was, honestly, the Washington Redskins, where they haven't had a big-time receiver since Randall L. that's been able to be a real athletic playmaker. So that was also my reasoning with that, too.
Yeah, Pryor only has 20 receptions, 240 yards, 1 touchdown this year, and he's a free agent after the year, so I would think Pryor's going to be gone. Dotson's also disappointed. I would say Jamison Crowder's probably been Washington's most effective receiver in terms of options out, because with what he's done this year, 51 receptions, 628 yards, he only has 1 touchdown to go with it, though. Washington really doesn't have a number 1 guy. If you look at the stats, you look at what the receivers have done this year, they have a bunch of quality weapons, but they don't really have a number 1 guy constantly making plays for Cousins, and that's a problem, and Washington solves that problem.
Exactly, and they finally solved that problem by getting Washington. Washington solved their problem by getting Washington, so.
Yep. Next up, we got the Miami Dolphins. They're taking a running back.
Yes, the Miami Dolphins finally are able to get a running back from Stanford. They should have targeted McCaffrey a lot better. I feel like they should have been able to make some kind of deal, whether it was trade Ajay like they ended up trading him and try and get Christian McCaffrey for some type of offense that they're going to run. But this time they don't make that mistake. The ball is right into their lap. They're able to get the running back out of Stanford, Bryce Young, someone who's actually going to be able to hit the three, someone who's a tough runner, and honestly, someone who, in my opinion, is kind of a playmaker. I mean, I'm not trying to say Christian McCaffrey wasn't, but I feel like coming from the definition of the sense of a playmaker being someone that can create plays in impossible situations, I feel like that's kind of what Bryce Love is going to be able to bring to the Dolphins. And, of course, with the loss of the Jai through that trade, I mean, it's definitely on my consideration for the Dolphins to get a running back that's decide.
Yeah, Kenyon Drake had 120 rushing yards in your Denver Broncos last week, and you want to replace him.
Well, I'm just saying that ultimately I feel like Miami's running game is good right now because people haven't had a chance to watch their players on tape. I feel like some of the running game made me have frustration from Denver last week, especially because they were on the field so much because, well, let's face it, that's why they got a quarterback in the first round. Denver wasn't able to get first down. They weren't able to move the ball. So part of that was the running back taking advantage of a very, very tired defense.
Yeah, and maybe that's just a testament to how bad Denver's defense has been. I mean, Drake had 123 yards in the Broncos, and if he can duplicate that on Monday night versus the Patriots, he's going to be the running back in Miami. That's all I'm saying.
No, I feel like what people realize is that if your defense is constantly on the field, they're going to start to give up points in bigger plays because your defense is going to start to get tired. I'm not trying to say that that should be expected or you should say, hey, guys, it's okay if you're getting tired. But let's face it, if your offense is getting turnovers constantly, they're on the field for a very short amount of time, and you only get a quick breather, of course you're going to sit there and start to get frustrated, start to lose mental focus on assignments as well. So I feel like that was part of the reason why the Dolphins have had a little bit of running success too. So I feel like ultimately they choose a running back because they want to be able to get somebody that's more of a franchise and somebody that's a little bit more of an upgraded talent.
The Finsider reported that Kenyon Drake is expected to carry the majority of the carries in 2018. So we'll see what the Dolphins do. I mean, Kenyon Drake has 320 rushing yards so far and 65 carries. The former Alabama back has 4 more games to impress the Dolphins with his abilities. And if he can deliver like Ajayi did, and he can get some games, then he could stand out. Like, the thing that made Jay Ajayi so special is he could block well, he could drop, he could catch passes, he had 3-down ability, and he had those 200-yard games where he just wowed you. You didn't see that from Kenyon Drake, even though he was impressive versus Denver, and that's a big reason why you gave them Bryce Love.
Well, exactly. I mean, like I said, there's definitely some different factors. I mean, if he plays this well consistently for another 2 games, I would consider maybe. But right now, I think that Miami just needs a bigger name running back and somebody that's going to be a little bit more of a tough-nosed running back versus a flashy back.
Yeah. Number 14, you gave the Chargers Sam Darnold. I think he's going to go back, but if he declares, he'll probably go in the top 5, and that'll put a huge juxtapose in my mock draft, a huge hole. I'll have to figure out where I'm going to put him. That's going to cause Lamar Baker to drop. So that's the thing. I don't know if Darnold's going to stay or go pro yet, but I just get the feeling he's going to stay.
I feel like I've heard that he's going to stay as well. Different threads that I've been reading has made it sound like Darnold's going to stay for another year because he realized that his stock had dropped that much. I think if he were to play just a little bit better this year, he probably would have ended up leaving because his stock was already so high, so it couldn't drop too badly. So ultimately, I think he does stay, but just in case he doesn't, I think that's a little in here. Like I said, I feel like there's better quarterbacks than him in this draft, but I feel like he would actually run a lot behind Philip Rivers. I mean, they both have similar characteristics. They have that cannon arm. They can come up big for you. They can also create those turnovers that can cost you a game. So ultimately, I feel like they get the same type of player. And then with Rivers trying to groom him, I feel like Sam Darnold turns out into being a really good quarterback.
Yeah, and number 15 is a player that we had in the top 10 at the beginning of the year, but they got exposed a bit on tape, so their stock drops, but they're still the top safety in this class, and that's Derwin James out of Florida State.
Exactly. I felt like the Cowboys would benefit from getting James because you have a Cowboys secondary who sees Carson Wentz, they see Kirk Cousins, they also see Eli Manning and company as well, then soon to be maybe even a Josh Rosen.
Yeah, Byron Jones has just been awful at the free safety spot, and Derwin is an upgrade over that. Plus, the Cowboys have to do something. If Byron Jones, their 2015 first-round pick, can't step up to the plate in these final 4 games, the Cowboys have to consider the idea of replacing him. And Derwin's the top safety in the draft, so I feel like at this point you have to consider it.
Exactly. I mean, you just have a guy that's a playmaker that's going to be able to be an upgrade of the position and someone that's going to be a hard hitter, especially coming from the University of Florida State. So, I mean, that program has some good defenders in this class as well. So I feel like you definitely get the value as well.
Yep. And then to wrap out the top 16, the Oakland Raiders. Kerm, do you want to provide your input on this pick if you're still in the call? Derwin James out of Florida State. You saw Florida State versus Alabama. What did you think of Derwin James, and how do you feel about him on the Cowboys, replacing Byron Jones?
I don't remember the tape from 3 months ago. But with everything I read about Byron Jones, he's not stepping up like he was supposed to. I have no problems with them being selecting somebody else, maybe moving him to the strong safety, and picking this guy up, say to maybe the free safety.
Yeah, and my number 16, Ryan went with, instead of going with a middle linebacker, Ryan went with Mike Mcglinchey out of Notre Dame. And this is the thing, this is the thing with Oakland's offensive line. They cut Austin Howard at right tackle, and they never replaced Austin Howard at right tackle. That's why their offensive line sucks at the moment. But if you draft Mcglinchey as a right tackle, you could group him behind Donald Penn. Like, you could have Penn be the left tackle for another year or two, and then you can move Mcglinchey over to that spot. You can work with him, fix his flaws on tape, and you can turn him into a stud right tackle that kicks it over to left tackle eventually. So it's a great pick for Oakland, and it fixes their offensive line problems and gets this offense back to where they were in 2016 when they were one of the top 5 offenses in the NFL.
Exactly. I mean, the Raiders get Mike Mcglinchey here to be able to develop into a starting left tackle here in the next few years, but they're able to keep Derek Carr, who obviously their prize gem on offense, protected. So now you actually are able to keep your player protected. He's going to get you into the playoffs and be able to get you past the second round, assuming he stays healthy. So ultimately, I feel like the Raiders make a good choice if they do go with Mcglinchey right here.
And they get their right tackle to replace Austin Howard, and they get. It sounds like Joey's on the call. I'm going to double check. I don't know if it is. He wanted to talk about Dorsey. Let me see. Let me see if that's – no, nobody's on the call. All right, so that's just – we'll get to the – we're going to get to 17 through 32 right now, though. I am loading the page here, and the team that's on the clock is the Detroit Lions. Jeff Hensley and Chris Robbins, Adam Lombardi's Draft Talk, are both huge Lions fans, and Ryan and I see eye to eye on this pick. But that's probably going to change in the coming weeks with you giving the Lions the local kid, Maurice Hurst. But right now, you gave him Wilkins.
Yes. Yes, I did. I gave Lions Wilkins, and the reason for that is because they finally get some of the stuff up the middle. You have all these other teams that are starting to drop these running backs that are full type backs. And then, of course, in the NFC, you have Adrian Peterson going to the Cardinals, bouncing around. So, I mean, really, by getting this pick, you're going to be able to get a stuffer and something that's going to require a double team that's going to open up your defensive ends. So I feel like with the pocket passers as well as the NFC has versus some of the athletic playmakers as well. So ultimately, I think that this is more of a safe pick for the Detroit Lions, and then building on the linebacker pick and then the secondary pick from last year as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, the Lions' defensive tackle position has been a huge liability for them this year. Haloti Ngata's been dealing with injuries. He's going to be a free agent after the year, so I'm guessing he won't be re-signed. And then you got Ashawn Robinson out of Alabama, who Joey and I both loved on tape coming out of Alabama, but he has zero sacks on the year through 12 starts, which is inexcusable for a second-year defensive tackle. I know he's mainly a run stuffer, but he could get anywhere from 4.5 to 6.5 sacks at Alabama. He hasn't shown that fire and intensity yet with the Lions, so they got to get someone who can be a leader on this defensive line. Maybe Wilkins fits that bill, Ryan, and that's why Wilkins at 17 makes a lot of sense logistically for the Detroit Lions.
Yes, exactly.
And moving on, we're going to look at Marcel Darius' replacement. The Bills, they drafted Marcel Darius 3rd overall out of Alabama and traded him to Jacksonville for a 6th-round pick. You have him going with another defensive tackle out of Alabama.
I do. I really do like Javon Payne. I mean, we kind of talked about him yesterday. I mean, he has a lot of potential. I think that he's a run stuffer who comes from that same Alabama culture of running, that same type of aggressive, hit 'em hard defense. I mean, everything is really up and up for Alabama. So I feel like by them being able to being able to replace the defensive tackle at that position and being able to help develop somebody that's going to be that aggressive run stopper. Plus, you're going to have someone that wants to get the quarterback. I mean, especially in the division with Tom Brady and company. And you also have like Ryan Tannehill, etc. I mean, it really makes sense just to get a defensive tackle that's going to help create plays for you in the early line.
All right, moving on to number 19. This is Lisa's number 1 receiver for the Packers, and you gave the Packers this receiver, Alan Lazard, out of Iowa State. This is the highest I've seen Lazard in any mock draft in the country.
Maybe I did give the Packers Lazard because I wanted to make sure I got on Lisa's Christmas card list this year. Or maybe it's because I'm making up for the mistake last year when they should have listened to me and drafted Zay Jones in the first round. So finally they're able to get a playmaking receiver this year in Lazard. Finally somebody who I think is going to be able to take it. Wide receiver picks because he's so good at route running.
Aaron Rodgers has elite route running receivers in Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and Devontae Adams. However, Adams is a free agent in 2018. Cobb and Nelson are free agents in 2019. It's a business decision to take a receiver.
Lazard's going to bring that whole team to a new level if he gets drafted in the first round, because you're finally going to have a guy that's going to be reliable and not get hurt all the time like Jordy Nelson has been over the past 5 years.
Let me look up the Jordy Nelson stats, because Jordy Nelson's an effective number 1 when he's healthy. I mean, I think he's been on injured reserve twice in the last 5 years.
Even I'm a good basketball player when I'm healthy, Chris. I mean, the point is that if a player is healthy, of course they're going to play good. I'm saying that on a regular basis, you have Lazard who's actually going to be able to stay healthy and be able to remain a target versus week in and week out like some of these other guys like Nelson Cobb.
Okay, Jordy Nelson played 16 games from 2013, 2014, and 2016. However, he's only played 12 games this year. He missed all of 2015, so he missed the full 2015 season. So he's only played 16 games once in the last 3 years. And you could tell his numbers have declined. He missed the first 4 games, but he only has 43 receptions after having 97. So that tells you it's time for a change. I mean, the fact that Jordy Nelson's gone from 97 receptions to 43, that is definitely alarming to a degree. And he's 32 years old, so it might be time for a youth movement. I still think Jordy Nelson's the number 1 receiver on the Packers for the short term until his contract is up, but they're going to bring someone else in. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Lazard, 799 receiving yards, 9 receiving touchdowns. He did drop some balls on tape, but he played awful versus Holton Hill out of Texas. But other than that, he's played well, and we'll see what happens. So he had a very good game versus Oklahoma State, picking apart their corners with ease. So we'll see what happens.
Yep.
This just feels like a pick that Packers would make. Number 20, Ronnie Harrison out of Atlanta. Go ahead, break this pick down.
Well, I like the safety out of Alabama. Same reason. You got a player coming out of a game-winning culture type thing coming from the University of Alabama. You also have a player who's going to be an athletic secondary playmaker at the safety position. Plus, I mean, he's not the strong side safety, but he is going to be able to make those reads on the quarterback strong side on that left side. So I feel like ultimately the Falcons are going to be able to have a player that's going to continue to help close out games, similar to the way that they did this past week when they caught a red zone interception off of Drew Brees. And I think that's what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to continue to build a fucking defense that's going to be able to take them to the Super Bowl.
At 21, the Buffalo Bills, they went Daron Payne with their first pick to replace their defensive tackle. Their middle linebacker is going to be a free agent. Preston Brown out of Louisville, he's going to be a free agent after this year. And with Buffalo giving up 18 rushing touchdowns, more than anyone in the NFL, maybe Buffalo will say we can't re-sign him because that 18 rushing touchdowns does reflect poorly. Even if their run defense is one of the better run defenses, that does reflect poorly. However, Preston Brown even though he's a free agent, he's had 147 total tackles this season. So, or wait, 100 combined, 47 assisted. Go ahead and break down the Malik Jefferson pick. They might not bring him back, or Preston Brown might want out. That might be the other thing, too.
Well, I feel like Malik Jefferson is going to be able to bring the Bills a little bit more attitude, hard-hitting, aggressive chasing. That is something that they would need right there inside that box of 8, especially with the AFC Conference division constantly being a known run team. So if they ever did run into the Kansas City Chiefs, the Denver Broncos, or the Chargers, different teams like that, they're actually going to be able to have a guy that's going to be able to help chase him down and not get tired. So I think Malik Jefferson was one of my number 1 linebackers, but like you said, you can't always depend on what they do last year. It kind of has to be this year.
I mean, Preston Brown has 4 consecutive seasons of 100 total tackles. So that's the argument for Preston Brown over Malik Jefferson. I think if the Bills don't re-sign him, the Patriots could pick up Preston Brown. We could see another Stephon Gilmore type situation in New England, where the Patriots steal a perennial Pro Bowler from the Bills in Preston Brown.
You know what? Expect him to go to the Cardinals. That's all I got to say.
You think the Preston Brown's going to the Colts?
The Cardinals, Chris.
Cardinals? Really? They drafted Hassan Reddick.
Well, yeah, but imagine if you actually have those two actually drafted there together. You have someone with that extremely veteran talent, and then you also have that. That's like the perfect box right there. Ain't nobody going to be running on you.
Yeah, that's true. But they got another linebacker. You know what? We'll see what happens. That's not the worst suggestion in the world. Number 22, another receiver who I think is a reach at this point, but a lot of people like him. That's Courtland Sutton out of SMU. The Ravens are on the clock.
The Ravens are on the clock. That is right, Chris. Right now, I got to say that the Ravens ended up drafting Courtland Sutton, and the reason for that is they've lost a couple of big-name receivers over the past few years, obviously, his retirement, different things like that. But now they have a big physical receiver and a guy that Joe Flacco is going to be able to see in the red zone, coming up with his big playmaking abilities. Some scouts have criticized him for clapping at the ball when he tries to catch it. Personally, I think that it's actually going to help benefit him. I think he's going to be a great receiver for that reason. All in all, I don't agree, but because you're going to have Joe Flacco sitting there throwing it to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is the thing, though, with Sutton. He claps sometimes when he catches the football. He's got to correct that. And if he doesn't, he's not going to make it in the NFL. If he does, you could be getting Randy Moss upside, but you could also be getting a bigger bust than Braylon Edwards. That's the thing with Sutton. And I've got like at least 10 receivers ahead of him on my receiver rankings. And a lot of them were picked after Sutton. So we'll see what happens here. A lot of people do have Sutton in round 1, though. So pretty much everyone not named Chris Ransom has Sutton in the first round at some point. So that should tell you something. Number 23 is Seattle. We're on to Seattle.
You know, Chris, I got to say this, and this is about the next pick. This is about Josh Jackson. I think that if Josh Jackson ends up on the Seahawks, he's going to be able to develop into that second coming of Richard Sherman. You're going to have a guy that's going to be an athletic playmaker and everything else in between. And I think that that's going to be the case with the Seattle Seahawks drafting this young gentleman right here. In fact, I think that this may be one of the better picks in the first round, where if we ever redo this draft, he's probably going to go in the top 5.
I have him in the top 10. I think I had him to Arizona in number 13. I've moved this guy up a lot on my board. So he's a player I expect to rise throughout the process. I think he's going to go in the top 15, to be honest. Number 24 is a player that Tony Mario told us about. He's Jadeveon Clowney's cousin, and he gets to stay in state where he played high school football in the Carolina area, and that's Anthony Johnson out of Buffalo. who Joey and I both really liked, and you seem to like him too. You there, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chris. What was that last part?
Carolina, they are taking a receiver Joey and I both really like, and that's Anthony Johnson out of Buffalo.
I really like Anthony Johnson and everything like that. I feel like the Panthers are either going to take a receiver or a tight end here. I was a little split up. I went ahead and picked a wideout because I feel like Cam Newton needs that target. I think that right now you see frustration in Carolina from Cam Newton not being able to throw the ball where he wants to some big name targets, and they recently traded one of my favorite targets for him, and that was Kelvin Benjamin. I sat there, Chris, and I shook my head, and I said, this Carolina team's going to start going on the down and down. That being said, though, at least now, if they get Anthony Johnson out of Buffalo, if they kind of start to get that offense that they had back in that previous couple of seasons ago when they went to the Super Bowl. So I feel like ultimately this pick was made for Cam Newton versus
Kelvin Benjamin was on injured reserve the year they made the Super Bowl, but Cam Newton just had everything going for him that year. That was like a vintage Newton year.
I'm not saying that Kelvin Benjamin wasn't hurt during the Super Bowl. I'm saying, though, that this past year, I finally saw Kelvin Benjamin that Cam Newton was starting to target because the chemistry was there. And for them to trade him and do him dirty like that was absolutely mind-blowing, and I was very, very frustrated with the Panthers at that point.
Yeah. Number 25 is another receiver, Anthony Miller out of Memphis, and you pair this guy with Dede Westbrook, just what Bortles can be able to throw it vertically downfield the entire game. You might lose Allen Robinson, you might lose Marquise Lee, but you have Miller and Westbrook, and you have these two deep threats that takes the offense to a whole new level.
How is Dede Westbrook doing, Chris?
I'll look up the Dede Westbrook numbers. Dede Westbrook is going to play today. He's been playing the last few weeks. I mean, Dede Westbrook hasn't really flashed or dominated, but he has 15 receptions, 154 yards, and 0 receiving touchdowns in 3 starts so far. So he's starting to get better and get more confidence in himself.
I think part of it, though, too, is with the team that he was going on. I mean, they're trying to fix the offensive line more than anything because they understand that Bortles is going to be the guy throwing the ball. I also think, though, that with this particular pick, you pair a guy like him and Dede Westbrook together, you're actually going to have that nice 1-2 punch that's going to give Blake Bortles a little bit more comfortability staying in that pocket, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Real quick as well, I mean, in the next picture and the next couple of picks, I got the Titans with Jair Alexander getting the cornerback out of Louisville. I really like that pick because I feel like the Tennessee Titans have been able to build on that offense. They have a solid offensive line. They've been able to really keep up as far as that side of the ball goes. I think now that they're going to want a playmaker and someone that's going to help them flow games, someone that's going to be able to come up big with plays in the red zone and everything else as well, and someone that's going to be able to play man-to-man. So I think that's why they go with Alexander as a pick.
Yeah, Jair Alexander didn't really he only had 4 deflections on the year, which was disappointing. However, the thing to take away here is he got all 4 of those deflections in Louisville's final 3 games, Ryan, which means he ended the year with a lot of momentum, the kind of momentum he had heading into the season. So he could still go in the first round because he ended the year on that note with that kind of momentum.
Exactly. I mean,
I know a lot of people look at stats like me and stuff, but the thing they downplay when they look at the stats is the player's momentum heading into the year, ending the year. And you can't downplay momentum.
I mean, I feel like part of the reason, though, is just because I feel like he has played that well because teams were afraid to throw to him. Whereas at the end of the year, teams were like, hey, he hasn't made a lot of big plays, but then when they started to try and test him, that's when he's been coming up big. So I think part of the reason was he wasn't getting his chance because teams were too afraid.
Yep. Number 27, we have our final quarterback heading to New Orleans.
Exactly. You got Josh Allen. I like the University of Wyoming. They've been able to play a pro-style form of offense over the past couple of years and produce some of the bigger name players that I've liked coming out of the University of Wyoming. I mean, 6'5", 233 pounds. I mean, he has the ideal frame. My concern, though, is this, Chris. He's missed the past couple of games because of the AC deal, and especially with your joints. I mean, that's not good, especially at the quarterback position when you're going to be constantly using your joints and doing the different things. And then you had a guy like the Minnesota Vikings, Teddy Bridgewater, non-contact injury, and it took him out for a whole season. So that was kind of a red flag. I'm also looking at the passing percentage. You have a guy
these accuracy issues. He has a lot of accuracy issues on tape. Even though he can make all the throws, he has a lot of accuracy issues, a lot of questionable intangibles. Struggled versus both Oregon and Iowa. So winless versus Power 5 teams in his career. Very raw, has a lot of red flags. So there's a lot of things to look at when it comes to Josh Allen having those question marks and those concerns.
And I think that's why I ended up having him get drafted so low. That I feel like I also put him on the Saints because you had a guy like Drew shoulder problem in San Diego at the beginning part of his career. So I think that he ends up learning a little bit from Drew Brees, like, hey, this is how you cope with the injury. This is what you need to do to take care of yourself. So I thought it was a nice little pick and match.
Yep, number 28, the Eagles are on the clock. They need a left tackle to replace Jason Peters because Jason Peters got placed on injured reserve this year. And this guy that you gave the Eagles at 28 is the perfect successor to Jason Peters.
Yes, I ended up picking Chukwuma
Okorafor. I know his name's a pain in the ass to pronounce.
Yeah, say that 5 times fast. Too. But I ended up getting him left tackle out of Western Michigan. The Eagles. Carson Wentz finally has a guy that's going to be able to protect his blind side. Not to mention, I feel like he's able to hold on to his blocks. I feel like he's able to be an immovable force, if that makes sense. I feel like he has that right offensive lineman mentality with the aggression. I also think that he's a smart player. I think he's going to be the type of player that's going to be able to help Wentz identify blitz along with the center as well. So I think right now, Carson Wentz is getting set up for success with this take on the offensive line.
Number 29, another offensive lineman with the Rams. I mean, this could be.
This guy is very, very high on my list. I wish other people would be able to see him as well as I do. I thought that he showed great mobility to be able to maintain blocks. I thought he showed a lot of strength. I thought he showed some decent footwork for the most part. I mean, his strength can always improve, of course, because you're going to be in the professional level. But Orlando Brown, I really liked as far as the instinct of an offensive lineman. He's constantly making sure that he was following through with his blocks as well. He wasn't just blocking and then releasing the block to either re-engage or to follow up with the guy was on the ground. So I think Orlando Brown is actually going to be a very subtly good first-round pick, and when we do the redo of the mock draft of 2018, he may go in the top 10. Right now, I think that it's a good fit for him to be on that team, though. I think that right now, with the way that the Rams culture is, as far as developing these newer players, it's the right situation for him to be into, and I think he would end up becoming that Alan Danica type of player that we see on the line.
Yeah, he could end up being the top offensive tackle in this class. It's too early to say. Moving on to Pittsburgh, number 30. They're not going to have Ryan Shazier or Tyler Matkovich versus the Ravens tonight at inside linebacker. And Vince Williams is serviceable. Special talent on tape like Rashaan Evans.
Exactly. On tape, you have a guy like Rashard Evans coming out 3-4. To me, I think he's going to be like similar to like a Von Miller type player where he's not going to be overpowering with a lot of playmaking ability as far as knowledge goes. He also understands how to be able to engage and be able to do different things. Ultimately, I was actually quite surprised and pleasant with how hard this guy can hit too. So I think you're also going to have a guy that's going to be able to step front. You throw him into a system like Pittsburgh, you're actually going to be able to see a guy that you see the potential with and be able to develop that potential because he's going to be surrounded by the right players, coaching, and the training as well.
Super Bowl runner-up, the hometown Minnesota Vikings at 31.
Yes, my Minnesota Vikings, my second favorite team behind the Denver Broncos. They end up getting defensive tackle out of Michigan, Hurst.
Yeah, and Hurst is a player you're going to move up because I know you did an article yesterday on Facebook. You posted it right before the mock, and you pointed out how Hurst was your new number 1 defensive tackle. So enjoy Hurst while you can, Minnesota. Ryan's probably going to give him to the Lions in a future mock.
Yeah, that's true. He'll probably end up going higher in a future mock. I kind of hope that he ends up dropping right here because I feel like he'd be the second coming of like a Pat Williams or a Kevin Williams for Minnesota. So I kind of put him in that position too because he also played in a colder area. So I feel like the transition for him as a player would be real easy as well. Plus with the way that the Minnesota Vikings develop their defensive talent. I mean, look at what they've been able to do with Smith, Xavier Rhodes, and even Chad Greenway from years past. I mean, obviously it's right there. So now you're going to have a guy on the line to develop like that. Suddenly, I almost see a mini Warren Sapp, Chris.
Yeah, and the Patriots, they went with Denzel Ward out of Ohio State to wrap up the first round.
Yes, the Patriots end up with Denzel Ward, the cornerback out of the Ohio State University.
Malcolm Butler's a free agent, and the thing with Malcolm Butler is he had an awful game versus the Broncos on Sunday Night Football, with Emmanuel Sanders winning all the one-on-one battles versus Malcolm Butler, and he doesn't press enough. He's great in man, he can play zone well, but he doesn't press enough. And trying to press them pretty easily. So even though he had that game-winning interception in the Super Bowl, I could see the Patriots moving on from him. And it's a good cornerback class. So there's going to be someone there at 32 or wherever the Patriots are picking if they don't win the Super Bowl. Anything else you want to add?
I feel like the Patriots like this pick too because they get a guy that comes from that winning culture as well.
That's definitely something to keep an eye on. He's only 5'10". There are other corners in this draft that are bigger, but this could be a player that's picked in the first round due to the demand of corners. Oliver out of Colorado is good. There's a lot of good corners that we left off this list, but we'll see what happens with the cornerbacks. And that was Ryan Romero breaking down our mock draft here on Google Hangouts. If you want to listen to the rest of the show, go over to TalkShoe.com and click on the Draft Utopia thing, and you'll be redirected to our episode.